Devin takes a step toward the dark side, and I made a huge mistake about the continuity of this show. Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in episodes 7 and 8 of Maul Shadow Lord. As always, we are spoiler-free for the first part of this video, and then episode 8 is chapter marked below. So let's start with episode 7, Call to Oblivion. Now that title is named after Devin urging closer to the dark side. In some ways, both Lawson and Two Boots are answering their own calls to oblivion that we're going to talk about as we go along. So we begin with the Star Destroyer over Janix sending Imperial ships and surveillance droids across the city. We see various people scared of martial law, including this Arcona, and then finally we land on the train station in lockdown. And remember, this is where Maul and Devin narrowly escaped from the Inquisitor last episode, and this train car must have pulled into the station, and then they continued on by foot in the tunnel. So the episode shows Devin making 3 crucial decisions that I think are helping to push her toward the dark side. First, when they are escaping and she's free to take Riley and get away from Maul.
He's a murderer.
But when Maul lets her know the stakes, she decides to stay with him.
We are being hunted. It would be wise to follow me. If you choose to continue on your own, you do so at your peril.
Maul is presenting their situation in very simplistic, animalistic terms. They hunt us, we will die. So reducing their existence to a primal state makes her more susceptible to fear, which, like Yoda said,
"Fear is the path to the dark side."
Remember that quote for later. I also like this moment where Riley bristles at Devin calling him a boy.
I need to get back to my master and get this boy to his father.
Boy.
Riley and Devin are probably about the same age, but she's a veteran of the Clone Wars, so no wonder she thinks of him like he's a child. Meanwhile, Docky and Lawson are in a deserted street next to this sign that reads store closed and another that reads closed closed. This is fitting since the two of them now have no options. Lawson's gangster friend Rena Sewell is now in hiding and their list of allies grows thin. In the tunnel, Maul works to make himself more relatable to Devin. She sees him simply as a murderer, but he lets her know that, hey, he's actually a victim. When she asks about his master, he says,
His betrayal was devastating, but it was not the deepest wound.
What's he talking about? Well, first, Sidious abandoned Maul after Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated him on Naboo. Then, after Maul made something of himself and captured Mandalore, Sidious killed his brother and took Maul prisoner. And afterwards, as we saw in the Maul Son of Dathomir comic, Sidious ordered the final death of Maul's mother. Sidious has taken away everything Maul ever cared about, and for revenge, Maul wants to end the Sith for good. And he does have a plan that fulfills that goal, with Devin's help, as we will talk about later on. So Maul is guiding Devin through the tunnels to his lair, and I gotta point something out. Maul, quite good with tunnels. He lived in a subterranean garbage dump for a decade after the Phantom Menace. Then, in the Siege of Mandalore, his forces were holed up in tunnels under the city, which, by the way, we also saw those tunnels in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. And then we go from the bowels of the city to the skyscrapers where Merrick, aka the First Brother, is striking a pretty kick-ass Spider-Man pose. This must be where he goes to think, I go to the Chrysler Building. Yeah, that one's nice too. Back at Maul's base, the gangster Ludi Barrio is still hanging around, and when he sees Devin, he says,
Oh, well, look who's back.
Remember, Maul was holding both of them prisoner, and when Devin escaped, she did not help Ludi. Maul also told both Ludi and Devin that they were always free to go, because he could sense that they would have to return to him because they had no other choice. Then Maul tells Devin that he has a plan to really take down the Empire, so this idea takes root in her. She knows that Maul is a murderer, she knows that he uses the dark side, but maybe she's starting to think that they need a murderer. Her master wants to run and hide. He wants to use caution and defense, but Maul has a plan. He offers solutions.
Leave this planet with me, and I will reveal my plan to do just that.
The thing is, though, Maul really does have a plan that works. He allies with the criminal organization Crimson Dawn, and then just before Return of the Jedi, 2 Crimson Dawn agents tell the rebels about the second Death Star, leading to Palpatine's first death and the fall of the Sith. But Devin still resists and wants to take Riley to safety, so Maul freezes her in place and then forces her to ignite her saber. This move immediately reminded me of Kylo Ren's first encounter with Rey in The Force Awakens. See, Maul is trying to force her into a fight to make her angry, so she'll be more susceptible to the dark side. But because Maul stopped to fight Devin, the Imperial probe droid above was able to pick up their lightsabers. And at first, I love that Maul doesn't even care. Even when the first generation stormtroopers land in the Lat ship, he keeps fighting. This is increasing Devin's fear and making her more susceptible to the dark side. And this is where Devin makes her second decision that could lead to her turn. In the tunnels, Maul made her afraid, and as Yoda said,
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
When the Imperials show up and Maul's attention is diverted, Devon could escape with Riley right now. He's beckoning her over, but she sees a chance to finally fight their oppressors. Maybe in this moment she gets angry. Maybe she wants to finally do something against the Empire. Maybe she wants revenge against the people who killed everyone she ever cared about. I imagined it would also be cathartic for her to fight stormtroopers, like she is reliving Order 66, but now on her terms. But this decision shows Devon that anger and revenge have a cost. Riley is taken by the Imperials. She watches them leave, much like Maul watching Qui-Gon's ship leave in The Phantom Menace. The question is, though, what will she learn from this event? Will she turn away from revenge or double down to take the fight to the Empire? And before I go on, I have to show you this new shirt at our merch store. It's a Japanese-inspired depiction of everybody's favorite Have Dark Side user. I cannot get over how amazing this design is, and you can get it right now at our merch store. And right now, if you become a ScreenCrush store member at our $5 tier, you get a 15% merch store discount among many other perks. That means that you get 15% off items like Tashi Station Power Converter Sale, Somehow Palpatine Returned, Hello There shirt, and Welcome Mat, The Apprentice Lives, Original Trilogy, Darth Master Vulcan, I Have Friends Everywhere, and other new shirts like this beauty, No One Is Ever Really Gone. Plus, orders over $100 get free shipping. Links are below, and thank you so much for your support. And then we go to Lieutenant Blake and Merrick greeting the site. Now, this is a Sith Inquisitor shuttle that we first saw in the show Obi-Wan Kenobi, but then again in Tales of the Empire. And just like we thought, the sixth brother exits the ship. This guy looks badass, but we really haven't seen him do much. He first appeared trying to arrest Ahsoka in an episode of Tales of the Jedi, and then he died in his very first appearance. We'll talk more about the sixth brother and his mask and the symbolism of it a little bit later in the video. And then we go to Master Dakian Lawson, who gives a little background on his Jedi experience.
I worked with one of your kind before, years ago.
Now remember, when he first saw footage of Maul, he said,
Laser sword?
Haven't seen one of those since the Clone Wars.
So I really like this small detail. It shows how not everyone in the galaxy ever had direct contact with a Jedi. In fact, the vast majority of people never saw a Jedi in person, which is how Palpatine was able to sell the lie that the Jedi started the Clone Wars. I mean, after all, they were seen leading clone armies, and the leader of the Separatists was a former Jedi. But, as Lawson tells us, not everyone believes this lie.
It never added up to me what they said about the Jedi being traitors. Not from what I saw.
The people who actually encountered the Jedi and worked with them believed that they could never turn against the Republic. Then Devon makes her third decision that I think edges her to the dark side. When she tells them that Riley was taken, Lawson immediately wants to take action and fight back, but Daki recommends caution.
Perhaps if we were to extricate ourselves, they would find leniency with the Lawsons.
And Devon shows a split from her master and chooses violence and action. It's subtle, but it shows how she doesn't fully trust her master's judgment, and she's very slowly sliding to Maul's way of thinking. After Maul finishes off the Imps, we get a quick scene to set up that the Mandalorian mercenaries are going to leave him later in the episode. But check out this animation detail, the reflection in the Mandalorian's visor. That is an incredible amount of detail for just this very quick scene. Now, the cases they are carrying are modular crates that we've seen all over Star Wars, but first appeared in A New Hope. And just to give some quick background here, the very first time Maul conquered Mandalore, he had partnered with the Mandalorian group Death Watch to help Pre-Vizsla take over the planet. Afterwards, he challenged Vizsla to a duel where Maul won the Darksaber in combat. And this meant, by Death Watch's laws, that they would now follow Maul because he is the true leader of Mandalore. Rook Kast stayed with Maul because of this duel, as she says later on.
Since you claimed the throne of Mandalore, I have followed you without question.
However, the Republic liberated Mandalore just before they turned into the Empire. So afterwards, the Empire cracked down on the planet and occupied the cities. This led to the Empire plundering all the Beskar from the planet and then laying waste to the planet in an event called the Night of a Thousand Tears. And this event essentially fractured the Mandalorian people. This might explain why these guys are all like, hey, screw your revolution, Maul, I'm in it for the reward. At the police station, Blake continues to harass Two Boots. This time he takes away his cup of caf, even though it's empty. Two Boots just wants to hold the cup to be more like Lawson, but Blake and the Empire are gradually taking away all signs of his individuality. And then Lawson calls him on the same handheld comlink we first saw in A New Hope, and he seals up the comm on his desk. Now, is this because he wants to ignore Lawson, or because he's waiting for a safe time to answer? Then the Imperials catch up to Maul, with Ludi barely getting through a collapsing door, a lot like Indiana Jones, but the Inquisitors are waiting on the other side. So Maul has been in situations like this before, at the Battle of Naboo. He was also facing two opponents, and he jumped onto very various causeways in order to create distance, just like in this fight. But this time, Maul is fighting injured. Daki damaged his robotic knee during their duel, and as we see, it is not yet fully repaired. Now, there are fights happening in multiple places, which is typical of climaxes in Star Wars stories. The Mandalorians follow through on the foreshadowing and then die immediately, leaving Maul's true believers behind. Now, the two Zabraks with him, Icarus and Scorn, have likely been with him since the Son of Dathomir comic. In those books, their leader, Mother Talzin, sent Zabrak warriors to aid Maul. So these guys would be fiercely fanatical to Maul because they are following one of the last orders that their religious leader ever gave them. This is why one of them sacrifices his life to save Maul and buys him just enough time for a final confrontation with the Inquisitors. Then they do that spinny thing with their sabers, which, by the way, I always thought was to make up for their lack of complete training.
What do you mean by that? They seem pretty tough to me.
Well, they are tough, but Vader and Sidious would never allow the Inquisitors to become too powerful, or else they would challenge the Sith rule of two. But if you threw a bunch of fighters in there with spinning blades, they could easily overwhelm a more seasoned Jedi. They tell him,
"The Emperor wants you."
and that's because at this point the Emperor could no longer use Maul. He would only be a rival for Darth Vader, or maybe the Chosen One would team up with Maul to overthrow the Emperor. So Maul raises his hands, not to surrender, but to call on his greater ally, the Force. I love this duel. They could have just set it in a dark cave, but they chose to add plants and running water, creating this beautiful garden element. And the way the animation of the lightsabers reflect and ripple through the water really makes this fight stand out against the many other lightsaber duels that we've seen in all these animated series. On to episode 8, The Creeping Fear. Now in this case, the title is referring to Maul and his personal journey, because later in the episode, he has to confront the fears of his inner child and move forward. The episode begins by quickly showing us that Merrick and the Sixth Brother are still alive, and then they're rescued by Imperials on a LAC gunship. Maul's forces also regroup, and there's an interesting moment here.
Lady Cast, we need to move out of Imperial range.
Did you catch it? I believe that's the first time we've ever heard Rook Kast referred to as a lady, meaning that she is a highborn in Mandalorian society. Mandalore rules on a kind of feudal system where houses like the Kreeses, Saxons, and Wrens rule over clans. So Rook Kast is of noble birth, which explains why these Mandalorians have stayed loyal to her. Note also that they have not changed their armor to emulate Maul, but Lady Kast has. So this is telling me that if she left Darth Maul's side, that these Mandalorians would follow. And then we go to the heart of the episode and one of the best Star Wars animated sequences ever, Maul's spirit journey. When he rises in the Rebel, the Inquisitor's words still echo in his head.
The Emperor wants you dead.
Now in the Clone Wars, Sidious captured Maul instead of killing him, which might have been some comfort to Maul because at least his former master still thought he served some purpose. But now he has been truly cast aside. We see literally step by step why this is so devastating for him. See, we always knew that Maul was motivated by revenge. It's one of his few lines in The Phantom Menace.
At last we will have revenge.
And then he wanted revenge on
Kenobi!
and then revenge on Sidious and crime lords, you name it. But this episode finally cuts to the heart of why revenge is so important to him. It's not because of his pride. It's because without revenge, he feels vulnerable. Maul seeks revenge so he never again has to feel like a weak child. So he tries to at first climb out of this hole, metaphorically trying to rise above his core feelings and his fears, but he slips back down. Then he has to face his true self, the young man in his reflection. This is Darth Maul from when he was a boy. See, Mother Talzin made an agreement with Darth Sidious to give him a boy to train. But as Talzin admitted in the comic Son of Dathomir issue 3, this was not her choice. As she says, Sidious promised to give me his right hand, but instead he stole what was most dear to me, my own flesh and blood, my son. So when Maul looks down and sees the reflection of the young boy, this enrages him and he forces it away. It's the first step of his inner journey, denial. Over the title card, notice we can hear Palpatine laugh. And that is Maul's creeping fear. Even after all this time, he's still just a little boy, terrified of the mean old Sith Lord. At the police station, Riley is brought into the same interrogation room as his father a couple episodes ago. Note, the same scratch marks on the table. And then the sixth brother enters. And I love the design of this guy. He has a face that looks like a rook skull. Now in Celtic mythology, a rook skull was meant to be a messenger from the afterlife. And this guy looks like he is a servant of death itself. And when the door shuts on him, it's just like Leia's torture scene in A New Hope. But as we find out later, they didn't really hurt him.
I didn't know anything.
Now at first, I thought Riley was lying and somehow the Sith Inquisitors turned him against his dad. But instead, they used the Force and they saw that he knew nothing, but they still kept him locked up. So Rena adds a ticking clock to the episode.
We leave in 2 hours.
And here I should point something out. One of our Discord users, HD Spock, told me that Dennis Haysbert, who voices Docky, also played Serrano in Major League. I never knew that. Elsewhere in the action, Officer Wade finally gets through to Two Boots.
Chief Kleiss is dead.
Now, if Officer Wade's voice sounds familiar, it's because he's voiced by your mom. And when Boots replies with the proper protocol, Wade continues,
"There was never going to be an investigation."
So Two Boots has always been about obeying protocol. And in this moment, he realizes that, hey, if the Imperials are not obeying the rules, then the rules really no longer apply. This is the exact same thought process that will lead to the creation of the rebellion years later. Outside the station, we see an Imperial scout transport. And I was actually wrong in our last video when I said this was an AT-ST Walker, but it's actually an earlier model. Note the wider windows in the front that can allow you to look out the side. More current AT-STs only have windows in the front. Now, back in the Clone Wars, clone troopers use small AT-RT walkers that must have evolved into this model. And because they were used to the AT-RT walkers where you had a full field of vision, they wanted a larger walker that allowed you to look out the side. And of course, these evolved into the chicken walkers that we saw in the original trilogy. And then all the threads start to come together literally and thematically. So Darth Maul is in the sewer confronting his father figure, Palpatine. We'll see that Palpatine demanded that Maul sacrifice everything for his master. Whereas, topside, we see that Lawson has decided to sacrifice himself for his son. It's showing us two very different methods of fatherhood. And then Two Boots finally overcomes his logical fallacy regarding the Empire.
I am rescuing you.
So, as the heroes are learning the value of family and sacrifice and reuniting, Maul is learning the value of fear and suffering, and he's all alone. The Inquisitor's words continue to echo in his head.
The Emperor wants
And remember, Palpatine was more than just Maul's mentor. This was the only father figure he ever had. So Maul has to trudge through the sand in this tunnel, which, by the way, I think this is literal sand, but it seems like a callback to the Mist of the Night Sisters. I don't think this is literally force magic around Maul, but it is reminiscent of the way the Night Sisters could conjure visions of the past. Although the metaphor here is clear, Maul is struggling to move through his past and deal with his trauma. He sees himself as a younger man with his brother Savage Opress. Now in the Clone Wars, Mother Talzin made Opress stronger with dark side magic so he could become Dooku's apprentice. He later betrayed Dooku and rescued his brother, and the two of them formed the gangster organization the Shadow Collective. In the Sandstorm, Maul sees his training with Sidious, where every mistake was met with excruciating force lightning. Then there's a flash of light with Obi-Wan Kenobi as we hear actual audio from the Phantom Menace. This is followed by Maul's point of view of how the fight ended. It's a brilliant shot because that's exactly what this sequence is doing, showing us the past from Maul's perspective. Then he sees a vision of himself in the garbage dump when Savage rescued him from madness, followed by Palpatine killing his brother on Mandalore and then Maul mourning over his body. Personally, I think they should have also shown the scene from Maul, Son of Dathomir issue 4 when Grievous kills Maul's mother right in front of him. That comic was originally intended to be an arc on the Clone Wars, and it would have been really cool to see part of it animated here in the show. So with all of this trauma trying to force Maul back, his hate drives him forward, as we cut to Devon also running forward past this Rodian. She enters a garage and decides that, hey, this is the best speeder for me.
Perfect.
Rather than trying to reason with this big guy or finding a different speeder, she takes the quick and easy path: violence. Remember, in her first episode, she wanted to steal against her master's wishes, but now she seems to have far less regard for what her master would want her to do. She takes these guys out pretty quickly and does not change the boss music track they were listening to. At first I thought, oh, that's too bad, that's really good fight music, but it turns out that it is great car chase music. At the police station, Two Boots is pulling the old, hey, just taking a prisoner to another cell block trick that we've seen numerous times in Star Wars, of course beginning with A New Hope. And it always goes wrong.
I wasn't notified.
No transfers were scheduled.
After Riley and Lawson reunite, Two Boots does a full face turn.
About that, Captain, the deal is off.
And we are off. Now, throughout the chase scene, the Imperial speeder bikes make the same sounds we heard in Return of the Jedi. There's the Doppler effects. Downshifting, blasters, and of course, the crashes. Now, the tunnel in the chase reminded me a lot of the escape tunnel chase from George Lucas's first feature, THX 1138, and the console in the speeder is very much like an 80s Atari game. Lawson pulls this kick-ass move, blasting these guys from outside the car, and then Devon narrowly misses getting destroyed by the lat, so they have to drop down to a different track. This, of course, reminds me of the hell of Mario Kart's Rainbow Road, especially because this Imperial falls right off the edge, which Doug does all the time.
That's true, you got me. I'm not very good at Mario Kart because I don't got thumbs.
And then we go to the best moment of the chase. Devon executes a perfect J-turn, now driving in reverse. Docky uses the force to cast aside one speeder and then lifts the other one up into the lat ship in a shot that mimics the scale of E.T.'s first flight, or like when Eleven flipped that van in Stranger Things. So while the heroes are soaring, Maul is limping through the sewer and once again sees his younger self in a puddle. But this time, instead of violently brushing the image away, he makes a promise.
I won't let him do this to anyone else.
And the ripple slowly fades into Maul's face. Now there's an expression, the child is the father of the man, meaning that we are all shaped by our past traumas. In this case, Maul is no longer trying to fight his fear or oppress his feelings. He's now going to remember how Sidious made him feel and use that fear to get revenge on his former master. And as the heroes get closer to Rena's ship, Devon tells Riley,
"Fear is natural. We just can't allow it to control us."
And this is the opposite lesson that Maul learned in this episode. He has decided to use fear as a weapon. Again, going back to how dark side users draw their strength.
Fear is the path to the dark side.
In the elevator, the Jedi immediately sense that something is wrong.
No, something's not right.
I sense it as well.
And we get a repeat of The Empire Strikes Back, where Han wanted to trust his old buddy Lando, not knowing that he already made a deal with the Empire.
I had no choice. They arrived right before you did.
So when Rena realizes that the Jedi have escaped, she goes commando on the Imperials, blasting several of them before taking out the ship's engine, maybe killing herself in the process. I mean, I'm sure this blast killed Blake, but the Inquisitors probably jumped down the elevator shaft to pursue the Jedi. I mean, we know from other media that they survived. Then this takes us to, for me, one hell of a twist ending. Maul and his forces take over the penthouse that belonged to Demas, which we saw back in episode 1. And then Ludi tells them,
"That was a representative from Crimson Dawn. Dryden Voss requests an audience."
So this changes a good bit of continuity and reshapes my brain a little bit. Crimson Dawn, like you guys know, is the criminal organization that Han fell afoul of in the movie Solo. That movie takes place about 10 years after this show, when the organization was being led by Dryden Voss. But then he dies in the film, and Kira talks to the real boss of Crimson Dawn, Darth Maul.
You and I will be working much more closely.
So I just assumed that Maul was the true founder of the organization. He's red, it's called Crimson Dawn, it seems to make sense. And then, in the comics, Kira reveals the true purpose of the Dawn is to take down the Sith Empire. That's why 2 Crimson Dawn spies leaked the existence of the second Death Star to the Rebellion. But now it seems like that Crimson Dawn already existed, and Maul takes them over, or at the very least becomes overlord of several crime syndicates like the Pikes and Crimson Dawn. So next episode, we might get a voice appearance from Paul Bettany, which is awesome. Remember guys, head to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush at checkout for 15% off. But what did you guys think about these episodes? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or at me on Twitter, Blue Sky Threads, or follow me on Substack, or you can find me on our free-to-join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.